time ago that ILM and Lucas were actually going to redo that lightsaber battle with CGI trickery in A New Hope to have it match what we got in the prequel trilogy. I honestly would be okay with that if they did it right. And I think this was around the time of Attack of the Clones, because I think the conversation was swirling around Yoda before we had really fully seen the duel between Yoda and Dooku at the end of Attack of the Clones. Maybe it was right afterwards, because once we saw it, it totally worked. I mean, everybody was kind of like, is this going to work with this, little 3-foot-tall green guy against Dooku, who's, I don't know how long. I mean, Christopher Lee is really tall. And they actually pulled it off. Just as an aside, and I'm doing a lot of those, but as an aside, it still kind of bums me out, because for all the things that the Star Wars movies, all 6 of them, did that worked, it's funny that the one thing that didn't work is the one thing that everybody gripes about the most. I guess that's how I get past Jar Jar. Let me talk Jar Jar for a moment. That's how I'm able to sort of get past and look past Jar Jar and watch The Phantom Menace and still really enjoy it. It's because of the fact that Star Wars had so many different opportunities to screw things up, that the one time they kind of did, we as fans can't seem to let go. I don't think the prequel trilogy would get as slammed nearly as hard as it does if it hadn't have been for Jar Jar and a couple of moments in Attack of the Clones. I did think a couple of moments between Anakin and Padme in Attack of the Clones, even those ones make me cringe. That scene by the fireplace, and I've mentioned this before, but I'll mention it again. That scene at the fireplace should have been great. When he's professing his love and she finally reveals to Anakin that he actually feels something for him too. That should have been amazing, but I wish I could wish away my feelings. Every time I watch that, I go, come on, you're so close. This should have been an amazing moment. I mean, in The Force Awakens, that moment on Starkiller Base when they find Rey and Rey looks at Finn and says, "You came back for me." And then Chewie goes, and what did he say? That it was your idea. And they embrace and they hug. I mean, there was more emotion in that, and I don't even think that was necessarily the intention to make it romantic, doing that thing with my fingers. But there was more emotion in that than there was in that whole fireplace scene with Padme and Anakin. But again, they get so many things right, like that lightsaber duel between Yoda and Dooku, and to a certain extent, the lightsaber duel between Yoda and Palpatine, and Palpatine as well. So, when it comes to Rogue One, that's going to be a very interesting fine line that they're going to have to dance on. The one way I think they're going to be able to get away with it, and I've gone completely off of the point I wanted to make about Slave One in that picture. I'll get back to it and we'll talk vehicles, but the one thing that I think will help them is that they've been pretty forthright in saying there won't be any Jedi in this movie. They didn't say any Sith, but there won't be any Jedi in this movie. And because of that, I don't think you're going to have an opportunity to see Darth Vader square off against anybody one-on-one. So if you've just got Darth Vader on the battlefield and this is supposed to be a war movie and he's using the Force and throwing around rebels and cutting people down, much like a Jedi is chopping down, a battle droid in the prequel trilogy, then I think we'll be okay. Now let me go back to Slave One and the point of why I brought this up in the first place. I'm obviously excited for Rogue One, but nowhere near like I was for The Force Awakens. I hadn't seen any imagery yet that really got me excited until that one little picture. And that, to me, just, opened up a whole new world. Because that really got me thinking in much broader terms. Wow, we could actually get some Boba Fett in this movie? I don't think we'll get a lot. Maybe. I think if we do, they'll do it right, and he probably won't be talking a lot. But the idea that we get Slave One and Rogue One really, really, again, gets my mind turning of, wow, I wonder what they're going to end up doing with that. Because the original thought was that the bounty hunters were being used to help go and steal the Death Star plans. Almost a Suicide Squad-esque type of scenario. And most people are thinking that's not the case anymore. So perhaps... Boba Fett plays a role working with the Empire. So we see Boba Fett prior to the first time that we see him. Well, we see him in A New Hope in the special edition for just that moment on Tatooine. But we see maybe Boba Fett working with Darth Vader, and we get kind of a backstory to when he's used in The Empire Strikes Back. And maybe we even get the backstory to I want them alive, no disintegrations. I'd be cool with that. I like this idea of expanding upon what we have and filling in some gaps in certain places that actually enhance the movie-watching experience of the original trilogy. If it's done right. I mean, all of this is sort of under the auspices of if it's done right. If it's done right, and we get interaction between Darth Vader and Boba Fett, and when we go to watch The Empire Strikes Back and we go, whoa, this whole scene of the bounty hunters now on this Death Star looking for the Millennium Falcon has a lot more weight behind it, and we have a lot more understanding than we did. What's interesting, too, is the way that we view these movies differently now. And I'm going to switch up now that I'm at this spot. My intention was to riff off of Slave One and talk vehicles and starships. But since we're right here, I'm going to go ahead and do my why I stopped caring about Rey's parents and learned to love The Force Awakens even more portion of the podcast. And then we'll get back into spaceships because I got a whole bunch around me. I've got all my diecast and Black Series little spaceships here, and I want to talk about them. But when we watch the original trilogy, and we ventured here before, but when we watched the original trilogy, we didn't watch it with, and even the prequel trilogy to a certain extent, we didn't watch it with this need to go and find out the backstory of all these characters. It almost is to our detriment that we got such great twist in The Empire Strikes Back of Vader being Luke's daddy, and these stories, the saga stories at least, being stories about families, because now we zero in and we obsess over who's related to who, right? I was thinking about The Phantom Menace, and I'm thinking, man, and maybe I just wasn't involved in the conversation, but I don't remember ever, I mean, I was a huge Star Wars nerd back then when that came out back in 1999. I don't remember ever, actually having any conversation with anybody about where Shmi came from. I mean, I know in the movie she says that, he was the Immaculate Conception, but even then, I never really thought about it beyond that. I just kind of accepted that's what it was. When we watched the original A New Hope, nobody really thought about Darth Vader's background. He was just the bad guy. When we watched The Phantom Menace, and I know we already know where Palpatine is going, but we don't really sit back and think much further about the background of Palpatine and his transformation to become a Sith. I mean, I know that's been fleshed out in some expanded universe stuff, and certainly in Revenge of the Sith with the conversation about Darth Plagueis that I almost wish hadn't taken place because people can't seem to let it go. But we never really obsessed over, well, prior to The Phantom Menace, prior to Episode 1, where did he come from? We just kind of accepted it for being what it was. And when I started thinking about that, especially after my last viewing of The Force Awakens, it was almost like I had to frozen it. I let it go. Let it go. I don't care who Rey's parents are. Let it go. I finally went, you know what? I'm going to kind of stop obsessing over who Rey's parents are. When we find out, we find out. It doesn't really, at this point in time, it's not necessary to enhance the enjoyment of the film. I would actually argue that not knowing who Rey's parents are at this moment actually maybe does more, and then not thinking about it. Because, again, going back and watching it the last time, I want to go watch it again in the theater at least one more time before it comes out on Blu-ray and just watch it without thinking about, and the moments in the film that give me clues to Rey's parents. Well, let me be honest. I've watched it since then. I have a bootleg copy. But I'm okay with that because I'm going to buy the Blu-ray, right? I have a bootleg. It's not the greatest bootleg, but I have a bootleg copy of it. So I've watched it at home. And the last time I watched it at home, which is a much different experience than watching it on the big screen, I did sort of watch it through a lens of not thinking at all about Rey's parents, just watching it as a movie. And I really found myself enjoying it, again, just as much as I had the other times I'd watched it, and certainly enjoying it more than I did the last time in the theater, apart from seeing it in the theater as opposed to, watching it on the smaller screen and not being a great copy. And it made me appreciate the movie more when I kind of just let that go and just went on the journey and went on the ride. Because I was thinking, and as I spent the last couple of podcasts sort of talking about this and then relating it to Rogue One and whether or not Felicity Jones's character maybe related. And I went, you know what? I'm going to let it go because I don't need that. I don't need to know. And the other part of it is we're not going to find out. Nobody is going to find out who Rey's parents are until Episode 8 comes out, in December of next year. So we've got about 2 years. I mean, unless something leaks and MakingStarWars.net has the answer before then, we're not going to know. And there's some speculation that we may not even know until Episode 9. So again, I've learned to stop caring about Rey and stop caring about Rey's parents. I still care about Rey. Stop caring about who Rey's parents are, and I've learned to love Star Wars The Force Awakens even more. All right, let's talk about vehicles. So that one image of Slave One and that little tiny picture of a Lego in Germany for Rogue One got me excited for Rogue One. I love that spaceship, Slave One. It is so different and so unique. And the thing that the Star Wars universe has done on a number of different levels as it relates to the vehicles themselves, for as weird as this sounds, it challenges your conventional line of thinking. And maybe I'm going too deep on this. It's possible. I don't think I am. I think there's some truth here. But I love looking at the art books. The art, I have all the art books for all the concept art for all 7 films. And I can look at those over and over and over again to see where these ideas came from, to learn what was the starting point for this particular design or that design. What was the intention originally when it came to creating the TIE Fighter, and how did that go and develop? Looking at the art book for The Force Awakens, it was clear that a lot of the artists were heading in a certain direction and then changed course and kind of brought it back to match the original movies. And JJ said that they needed to go backwards to go forwards, and they certainly did updates to all the vehicles. The X-Wing fighter is different in very small but profound ways to the original X-Wing fighter that we saw in the original trilogy. It definitely looks just like some of the Ralph McQuarrie artwork. It's funny because J.J. Abrams came out. There is a very specific piece of art that Ralph McQuarrie did for A New Hope that shows an X-Wing being fired upon by a TIE fighter in the trench on the Death Star. And that X-Wing is exactly what they created in The Force Awakens. It looks exactly the same, with the split engines and the scissor the scissor wings of the spaceship. Now, J.J. Abrams in the art department said J.J. asked them to do that before he saw that Ralph McQuarrie artwork, and it was only afterwards that they went, oh, wow, we created this X-Wing that ended up looking like what Ralph McQuarrie did. If that's true, there's no way. That was stuck in JJ's subconscious. There's no way he came up with that on his own. BB-8 was the same way. There actually is a drawing of a droid early on before R2-D2 was created that looks like BB-8. And JJ said that they created the ball droid idea before they'd seen that. But again, it looked... I think JJ had it... he had to have. There's no way that they ended up,